Hello, I'm Simon. Welcome to my workshop, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing the Axminster Craft AC216TS table saw. Let's get tinkering. Before we get started, you should know that this is an agenda-free review. No one's supplied anything to me, no one's asked me to do this review, no one's reviewing this review. Hell, even Google don't pay me, my channel's not monetised, and there aren't any affiliate links in the description. What it will be is my views on this table saw, having used it for 3 or 4 months. So let's get started. So I'll say up front, I'm really happy with this table saw. It's not without its problems, and I'll go through those, but it is a very good table saw for the money. Now the table saw itself is just this top part. The cabinet is an optional extra, which I'd recommend. It's a very good cabinet. Of course, you could make one yourself. Without the cabinet, don't be fooled into thinking this is something you can move around. It's very heavy. It's got a cast iron top on it. This sliding table is also an accessory, and if you've got the space, I'd certainly recommend it. I have a small workshop. This is slightly in the way, but I love it. It's a really useful addition to the table saw. The saw also comes with a plate steel side extension and a plate steel rear extension with the mitre slots. The blade is a 216mm, that's just over 8 inches blade. The quality control was pretty poor. There are a couple of items that were faulty and Axminster sent me new replacements. Those items were clearly faulty in the box. They'd never been checked in the UK, they were packed faulty, and I therefore received them faulty. Now, Axminster's customer care was excellent, there was no quibble, they just sent me the new items. So you do have that support, but be aware that I had a number of items in the boxes that arrived that were faulty, so I couldn't use it directly out of the box. My favourite part of the saw is this sliding table. It gives you a much larger surface if you're cutting sheet goods, and you can pull this all the way back to give a distance of 800 centimetres in front of the blade. For this cut, I've adjusted the sliding table saw to bring it as far forward as possible so that I've got enough depth between the fence and the blade to cut this piece of wood. This piece of wood is 610mm, and with this all the way forward I can cut pieces of wood up to about 800mm. I don't normally leave it in this position because it sticks out too far in my small workshop. I normally push it forward so I've got about 400mm of play on the sliding table before the front of the saw. And if you don't need this, it's very easy to take off. There's just one knob which you twist and it slides off like so. And it slides on just as easily. It comes with a very sturdy flag stop with a micro adjuster and a quick release bolt so it can be moved up and down. It comes with this hand lock, and there's a graded mitre so that you can set your angles. To get it square, you've got this little thing here, this little tab to bring it back into square. I just test it against the blade. I don't actually use this, but it's there if you want to use it and set it up. If this is in the way, you can just loosen these and slide it away, or you can lift the whole thing off. The fence itself is easy to move. It's got a little magnifier that helps you see the distance that you're set to. It comes with an auxiliary fence, which is easy to slide off. You can turn it round and it will go back in. I found this a little fiddly. No others haven't found it fiddly. But I find it a little fiddly. It's not particularly difficult, it's just fiddly. Let's slide back on like that. If you don't need the fence, then the whole thing lifts off nice and easily, and you can put it to the other side of the blade, and all of this is transferable to the other side. Here's a minor problem I've found with the table saw. If I pay attention to this bolt here, it's higher than the surface of the table. So it hits the wood. So if you've got a long piece of wood you want to cut, you're effectively raised off the table and you then start getting wobble because it's not on the table. Probably a millimetre too high. With the crown guard in place, the depth of cut you can get to at a maximum is 60 millimetres. That is, it's 2 3/8 of an inch. If you take the crown guard off, then you get slightly more. It's now 2.5 inches and 65 millimetres. This is something to be aware of. If you like to set your blade up so that the teeth just protrude the work, what will happen is it will hit the crown guard and you won't be able to push it through. You have to raise this up, lower the crown guard, then lift it slightly, and that is the lowest you can get it. And you can see the teeth come all the way through. Now some people might say that's correct and it's how it should be. Others like the teeth to only just come through or have half a tooth coming through. So it's just something to be aware of when you're using the crown guard. The teeth have to come all the way through or the crown guard is going to foul your work. One of the problems with this saw is this piece here. It's fitted to the wrong side. You can't fit it the other way around because of the way this piece has been made. And if you try and use a block like this, then what happens is you hit this before you get to the end of the cut. If it had been the other side, it wouldn't be a problem. Or if they'd designed it in a way that you could swap it around from one side to the other, it wouldn't be a problem. But they haven't, they've made it like that. So this cut really should be done by moving the fence to the other side of the saw. While we're talking about the crown guard, let's take it off for a second. It's worth also talking about the riving knife. The riving knife has 4 little grub screws that allow you to adjust it at all angles, get it perfectly square. Once they're adjusted, you don't really need to change them again. And it's held in with 2 bolts. They're relatively easy to whip this thing out nice and quickly. Now, one of the things I don't like about it is I would have preferred if the riving knife was the same height as the blade, so that I don't have to take the riving knife out when I want to do a non-through cut. As it is, you can't do non-through cuts with this saw without removing the riving knife because it's too tall. I sort of understand why they've done that. If this part here that holds the crown guard was lower, then the total height that you'd be cutting would be lower still. So I think they've made a compromise between getting this riving knife the right height for the crown guard to maximise the height of the cut, but the compromise is you can't do through cuts. One of the problems straight out of the factory is that whilst this measures 90 degrees or thereabouts, when I change the angle, I'll perhaps put it this side, I can't reach 45. So that's extended all the way. It's not quite at 45 degrees. Now, I can adjust it, it's just the stop's not been put in the right place. So it's just something to be aware of. I checked the instructions and I can't find anything that discusses the stop for this so that I can get the 45 degrees that I need. I notice there's 2 nuts here, or bolts, sorry, here, but I don't know what they do and they're not mentioned in the manual. This access panel is mentioned in the manual, so I'm going to take the access panel off and see if I can see a way of adjusting that 45 degrees to get it to 45 degrees. Okay, it's quite obvious now the access panel's open. This here, we've got a couple of grub screws and it looks like you can move it up and down this shaft. And the whole unit slides up and down this shaft. So if I keep turning this, eventually I come to a stop and it's not enough, so I just need to move this bit here a little bit further up the shaft. I've adjusted both of the stops. You can see that bed I've set to 0, so if I put this on here it shows 90, here it shows 0 because I've adjusted this little thing here. If I now turn the blade, all the way over, it's almost 45, I need to adjust it again. But what I want to draw your attention to, so it's showing 46 but the gauge is showing 45, so you can't use the gauge on the machine to any accuracy, so I'd probably just ignore it. The other thing I've noticed is this here, which is just a bit of plastic, has come off. I don't know how it was glued, but it needs re-gluing back on. I received some comments on my unboxing and assembly video from a viewer who had one of these table saws, and they said they had a dish in the middle of their bed and it was out by about 0.3 of a millimetre. Now, the response they got from their dealer was that the bed wasn't a precisionally ground surface and that you shouldn't expect it to be completely flat. So I've also tested to see how flat this bed is on this machine, so you get an idea as to what to expect. I have actually tried this with a number of different flat edges for a number of different fences. This is a 0.05 of a millimetre, and you can see that it starts to go under in the middle. It's quite loose there, so it's slightly high at the edges. If I try 0.1 of a millimetre, starting to go under there. It's quite a tight fit, but it is going under here. If I try 0.15 millimetres, basically doesn't go under anywhere. So it's between 0.1 and 0.15 of a millimetre dip in the centre at its maximum, which might just mean that this side's slightly out and just needs levelling out a little bit. I guess it depends on how flat is. This is probably within tolerances, but I don't know. If I measure it in this direction, then I get exactly the same result. So it suggests there's a dip in the bed of between 0.1 of a millimetre and 0.15 of a millimetre, at least on this machine. Dust collection with the AC82E, which you can see in the background, works pretty well. This is a low pressure, high volume dust extractor rather than a shop vac. That does have the advantage that it's a lot quieter as well. I'll show you some videos of me cutting some wood and you can just see the amount of dust that gets created. After cutting all these parts down from an 8x4 sheet, this is how much dust I had on the table saw. The only time the dust extraction doesn't work as well is when you're just trimming an edge, so you don't end up with an offcut on one side, because what you're cutting through is less than the kerf of the blade. The table saw is remarkably quiet. I'll just turn it on to give you an idea. I'm not going to change the audio levels here. And for comparison, here's the dust extractor, which is also very quiet. Now both. So hopefully that gives you an idea of the sort of noise levels. It's very quiet. It's a lot quieter than my cheap miter saw, and it's a lot quieter than my Henry Hoover. I've got no real complaints with the cabinet. It's quite sturdy, and if you look at my table saw assembly guide, then you'll see how it was made and the thickness of the steel and so on. The one thing I don't really like is the handle that locks the door. It's basically just a nut, one screw. Now, I have made a small modification to this which shouldn't affect the warranty, and that is this 3D printed tool holder to hold the tools that it came with. This just gets them out of the way of the cupboard so they're not cluttering the cupboard up. It's just stuck with double-sided tape to the door, so I shouldn't have invalidated any warranties or anything. And it just holds them there so I know where they are. I made another small change as well. The table extension had some holes in the sides, and I just added a bolt so that I could hang my push stick. If you want to print the tool holder out yourself, then I'll leave a link to my Thingiverse page where you can get the files. You'll also find there the files for this piece here, but I'll leave it to your imagination as to why I printed one of these out. Well, that about wraps up this video. I hope some of the points I've made help you make a decision one way or another as to if you should get this saw and if it is right for you. This saw is right for me despite the problems that I had early on. I'm really happy that I got it. It's a small saw for a small workshop, but with the addition of the sliding table, it has big ambitions. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, then please subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, why not subscribe by clicking my logo? It's free and YouTube will add some of my videos to your feed. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.